Sir, step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them.
This is my home. I live here.
Sure you do. ID. Now.
Officer, I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I just finished a 19-hour shift. My credentials are in my wallet.
Yeah, that's what they all say. Get on the ground before this gets ugly.
You're making a mistake.
At 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in Potomac, Maryland, the street was silent except for the soft hum of cicadas and the distant rush of traffic on the Capitol Beltway. Dr. Marcus Hayes, 46 years old, pulled his black Mercedes into the circular driveway of his Tudor-style home, exhausted from a marathon surgery that had saved the life of a 7-year-old girl with a congenital heart defect. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel, his surgical scrubs visible beneath his jacket. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. His lower back ached from standing at the operating table since 4 a.m. that morning. All he wanted was to see his wife, kiss his sleeping children, and collapse into bed. What happened in the next 43 minutes would be captured by his home CCTV system in devastating high-definition clarity. It would end 3 police careers, trigger a Department of Justice investigation, result in a $6.2 million settlement, and prove that even one of the nation's most distinguished cardiac surgeons wasn't immune to the kind of racist profiling that destroys lives and shatters the illusion of safety that affluent neighborhoods promise. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, because what unfolds over the next several minutes will leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this plays out. Dr. Marcus Hayes had spent the last 18 years building one of the most impressive medical careers in the Mid-Atlantic region. At 46, he was the director of pediatric cardiothoracic surgery at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., one of the top-ranked pediatric hospitals in the United States. His journey to that position hadn't been easy. Born in Southeast Washington, D.C., to a single mother who worked 2 jobs as a nursing assistant, Marcus was the first in his family to attend college. He graduated summa cum laude from Howard University with a degree in biochemistry, then earned his medical degree from Harvard Medical School, where he finished in the top 5% of his class. His residency in cardiothoracic surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital was followed by a fellowship in pediatric cardiac surgery at Stanford. He had performed over 2,400 open-heart surgeries in his career, many of them on children who had been given no hope by other surgeons. He had published 47 peer-reviewed papers in leading medical journals. He had won the American Heart Association's Distinguished Scientist Award. He had trained dozens of surgeons who now practiced across the country. Marcus lived with his wife, Dr. Kendra Hayes, a pediatric oncologist, and their 3 children in a 6-bedroom home they had purchased 8 years earlier in Potomac, one of the wealthiest communities in Maryland. Their neighbors included federal judges, ambassadors, tech executives, and senior government officials. The neighborhood prided itself on its privacy, its excellent schools, and its reputation as a safe haven from the chaos of nearby Washington. Marcus was known on his street as a quiet, focused professional who kept his lawn immaculate, waved to neighbors during his rare morning runs, and never made a fuss about anything. He served on the board of his children's school. He donated generously to local charities. He had never had so much as a parking ticket. That Thursday had been particularly grueling. Marcus had arrived at the hospital at 3:30 a.m. to prepare for a complex surgery on a 7-year-old girl named Emma Rodriguez. She had been born with tetralogy of Fallot, a congenital heart defect that affected blood flow through the heart. She had already undergone 2 surgeries in her short life, and this 3rd procedure was meant to be corrective, giving her a chance at a normal childhood. The surgery, scheduled to last 8 hours, stretched to 19. Complications arose. Bleeding had to be controlled. Repairs had to be adjusted. Marcus stood at the operating table, hands steady, mind focused, for the entire duration. When he finally closed Emma's chest and watched her vital signs stabilize, he felt the familiar wave of exhaustion mixed with relief that came after every successful high-stakes procedure. He changed out of his blood-stained surgical scrubs, put on clean ones, threw his jacket over them, and drove home through the darkness. His mind still running through every moment of the surgery, analyzing every decision, making mental notes for the follow-up care Emma would need. He had no idea that his quiet evening was about to become a nightmare that would expose the darkest reality of American policing, that credentials, accomplishments, and even a home in one of the nation's wealthiest zip codes couldn't protect a person of color from officers who saw threats instead of neighbors. Officers Ryan Caldwell and Travis Holbrook were supposed to be responding to a reported burglary 3 streets away. A homeowner had called 911 at 11:28 p.m., claiming he'd seen someone attempting to enter a neighbor's garage. Montgomery County Police had dispatched Caldwell and Holbrook, who were patrolling the area, to investigate. Caldwell, 34, had been with the Montgomery County Police Department for 9 years. His personnel file told a story that his supervisors had chosen to ignore. 7 civilian complaints over 6 years. Allegations of excessive force during traffic stops. Claims of racial profiling in affluent neighborhoods. Accusations of falsifying information in arrest reports. Every single complaint had been reviewed internally and dismissed, not investigated by outside authorities, not referred to the department's Office of Professional Responsibility for independent review. Dismissed. His supervisor, Sergeant Dennis Murphy, 52, had shielded Caldwell repeatedly, praising him in performance reviews as proactive and assertive in high-crime areas. Despite the fact that Caldwell spent most of his patrol time in Potomac, one of the safest communities in Maryland. Holbrook, 29, had 5 years with the department and a cleaner record, but he had a reputation among his peers for backing up Caldwell without question. Whatever Caldwell did, Holbrook supported. Whatever story Caldwell told, Holbrook corroborated. They were partners in the truest sense, 2 officers operating as a unit with minimal oversight and maximum autonomy. The burglary call that brought them to Marcus Hayes' street was legitimate, but something went wrong the moment they turned onto Persimmon Tree Road. Instead of heading directly to the reported address on Willow Oak Court, 3 blocks north, Caldwell made a decision that would destroy both their careers. He saw a black Mercedes pulling into a driveway, he saw a black man in the driver's seat, and in his mind, he saw something that didn't belong. Marcus turned off the engine and sat for a moment in the darkness of his driveway, illuminated by the soft glow of his home's exterior lights. Through the living room window, he could see Kendra reading on the couch, waiting for him. The sight made him smile, despite his exhaustion. He opened the driver's side door and stepped out, his keys in his right hand, his phone in his left. He was wearing navy blue surgical scrubs, white Nike running shoes, and a dark blue Columbia fleece jacket. His hospital ID badge hung from a lanyard around his neck. The patrol car appeared without warning, pulling into his driveway behind his Mercedes with lights suddenly flashing red and blue across the brick facade of his home. Marcus froze, confused. He turned to face the vehicle, keys still in hand, standing next to his own car on his own property. Caldwell and Holbrook exited the patrol car quickly, hands moving to their weapons. Caldwell's voice was loud, aggressive, and immediate. "Sir, step away from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them." Marcus raised both hands slowly, keys dangling from his right hand, phone in his left. His mind, trained through years of high-pressure medical situations to remain calm and analytical, began processing what was happening. He was on his own property. He had committed no crime. He had no obligation to comply with orders, but he also understood the danger of the situation he was suddenly in. "This is my home," Marcus said, his voice steady and clear. "I live here." Caldwell moved closer, his hand still resting on his holstered weapon. "Sure you do. ID, now." Marcus's hospital ID badge was clearly visible around his neck, swaying slightly in the cool night air. The badge displayed his photograph, his name, his title, Dr. Marcus Hayes, Director of Pediatric Cardiothoracic Surgery. But Caldwell didn't look at it. His eyes were locked on Marcus's face, on his hands, on his posture, searching for reasons to escalate rather than de-escalate. "Officer, I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon," Marcus explained, keeping his voice calm and professional. "I've just finished a 19-hour shift at Children's National Hospital. My credentials are in my wallet. My driver's license will show this address. Everything you need to verify my identity is right here." Caldwell's response was immediate and chilling. "Yeah, that's what they all say. Get on the ground before this gets ugly." The demand was illegal. Marcus hadn't committed a crime. He hadn't been stopped while driving. He was standing on his own property, holding keys to his own vehicle and his own home. But Caldwell had made a decision, and Holbrook was already moving to support it. Marcus made a decision that would later save his life and his case. He complied, not because he was guilty of anything, but because he understood that arguing with armed officers in his driveway at midnight could end with him dead. He lowered himself to his knees, then to the ground, lying face down on the cold concrete of his own driveway. His phone clattered to the pavement beside him. His keys skittered away toward the garage door. Holbrook moved quickly, kneeling on Marcus's back while pulling his arms behind him. The handcuffs clicked tight around both wrists, metal biting into skin. Marcus's face was pressed against the concrete. He could feel small pieces of gravel cutting into his cheek. Through the corner of his eye, he could see his front door. He wondered if Kendra had heard anything. He prayed she hadn't, because he knew what would happen if she came outside. Caldwell began searching Marcus's pockets, pulling out his wallet, his phone from where it had fallen, his car keys. He opened the wallet and examined the driver's license inside. The license clearly displayed Marcus Hayes' name and the address of the house they were currently standing in front of, 7624 Persimmon Tree Road, Potomac, Maryland. But instead of apologizing and releasing Marcus immediately, Caldwell pocketed the wallet and said something that the CCTV cameras would capture in crystal clear audio. "This doesn't prove anything. People steal IDs all the time. We need to verify this with the actual homeowner." It was a fabrication, a lie designed to justify continuing an encounter that should have ended the moment Marcus's identity was confirmed. Holbrook, still kneeling on Marcus's back, said nothing. He didn't question Caldwell's logic. He didn't point out that the driver's license matched both the man on the ground and the address of the house. He simply maintained his position, his knee pressing down on Marcus's spine. Marcus's medical training kicked in. He began assessing his own physical state. Pulse elevated but controlled. Breathing restricted by the pressure on his back but still adequate. Pain in his wrists from the handcuffs and in his face from the concrete. No signs of serious injury yet, but the potential for harm was escalating with every second. "Officer," Marcus said, his voice slightly strained from the pressure on his chest, "my home CCTV is recording all of this. My wife is inside. My children are asleep upstairs. Please check my hospital ID badge. Call Children's National Hospital. They will verify my identity immediately." Caldwell walked around to face Marcus, looking down at him with an expression that the CCTV footage would later capture in devastating detail, not concern, not professional assessment, but contempt. "You're awful talkative for someone in your position," Caldwell said. "Makes me think you've got something to hide." What Marcus didn't know was that his home CCTV system was capturing everything. 4 high-definition cameras positioned around his property, one above the garage, one at the front door, one at the side entrance, and one facing the driveway from the corner of the house, were recording in 4K resolution with clear audio. Every word, every action, every violation. Inside the house, Kendra Hayes had heard voices. She had looked out the window and seen the police lights reflecting off the walls. Her heart had dropped. She moved quickly to the window and saw her husband face down on the driveway in handcuffs, 2 officers standing over him. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking. "This is Dr. Kendra Hayes at 7624 Persimmon Tree Road in Potomac," she said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "There are police officers in my driveway. They have my husband on the ground in handcuffs. He's done nothing wrong. He's a surgeon who just came home from work. I need a supervisor here immediately." The 911 dispatcher, clearly confused by the call, asked her to repeat herself. Kendra did, adding crucial details. "My husband is Dr. Marcus Hayes. He's the director of pediatric cardiothoracic surgery at Children's National Hospital. He lives here. This is our home. The officers have him on the ground for no reason." The call was logged at 11:52 p.m., just 5 minutes after the encounter began. Outside, Caldwell had made another decision that would seal his fate. He radioed dispatch with a fabricated story. "We have a suspicious individual detained at 7624 Persimmon Tree Road. Subject claims to be a resident, but unable to verify. Possible burglary in progress, requesting backup." Every word was a lie. Marcus had already provided ID showing he lived at that address. He had offered multiple ways to verify his identity. There was no evidence of any burglary. But Caldwell had committed to a narrative, and he was building a paper trail to support it. 3 additional patrol units were dispatched to the address. Marcus, still face down on the concrete, made another critical decision. He activated the voice assistant on his Apple Watch, which was still on his wrist despite the handcuffs. "Hey Siri," he said quietly, "start recording audio." The watch, hidden beneath the sleeve of his jacket, began documenting everything. The pressure on his back, the pain in his wrists, the officers' voices, Every word would be preserved in a way that even the security cameras couldn't capture from Marcus's own perspective, with timestamp metadata that would prove invaluable in the federal investigation to come. Sergeant Dennis Murphy arrived at 11:58 p.m., 6 minutes after Caldwell's fabricated radio call. Murphy, a 25-year veteran of the force, stepped out of his patrol car and assessed the scene before him. A well-dressed black man in surgical scrubs, face down in handcuffs on an immaculate driveway in front of $1 million home, with 2 of his officers standing over him like he was a dangerous criminal. Something immediately seemed wrong to Murphy. He had responded to hundreds of burglary calls in his career, and this didn't look like any of them. Murphy approached and asked the question Caldwell and Holbrook should have asked 12 minutes earlier. What's going on here? Caldwell launched into his fabricated narrative. They had received a burglary call. They had spotted this individual exiting a vehicle that didn't belong to him. He had been evasive and uncooperative. They had detained him for officer safety. He claimed to live here, but they were waiting to verify with the actual homeowner. Murphy looked at Marcus, then at the Mercedes, then at the house. Did you search him? Yes, sir, Holbrook replied. Found a wallet with ID that matches this address, but we believe it might be stolen. Murphy's expression shifted. You found ID matching this address, and you still have him on the ground? Before Caldwell could answer, the front door of the house opened. Kendra Hayes stepped out onto the porch, phone in hand, her face a mixture of fury and fear. That's my husband, she shouted, her voice carrying across the driveway. Get him off the ground right now. We live here. He's a cardiac surgeon. What is wrong with you? Murphy raised one hand toward Kendra. Ma'am, please stay inside. No, Kendra said, stepping down from the porch. Not until you release my husband. He's done nothing wrong. This is our home. Our children are asleep upstairs. You have no right to do this. Caldwell moved toward Kendra, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. It was a threatening gesture, subtle but unmistakable, and it was captured by the CCTV camera above the front door in perfect clarity. Ma'am, step back inside or you'll be arrested for interfering with a police investigation, Caldwell said. Kendra didn't move. Investigation of what? Him coming home from saving a child's life? Call Children's National Hospital right now. They'll confirm his identity in 30 seconds. Murphy, now realizing the situation was spiraling, made the call himself. He contacted the hospital's main switchboard, identified himself, and asked if they could confirm the identity of Dr. Marcus Hayes. The response came within seconds. Dr. Hayes is our director of pediatric cardiothoracic surgery. He's one of our most senior physicians. Is there a problem? Murphy's face went pale. He looked down at Marcus, still face down on the driveway, and understood immediately that his officers had just destroyed their careers. But instead of releasing Marcus and apologizing, Caldwell made a decision that transformed a catastrophic mistake into a criminal act. His ID could still be forged, Caldwell insisted. People impersonate doctors all the time. We need to bring him in for verification. It was an absurd claim. The hospital had confirmed Marcus's identity. His wife was standing on the porch, his driver's license matched the address, but Caldwell had gone too far to back down now. Murphy, who had spent 25 years protecting bad cops instead of good policing, made his own fatal decision. He backed Caldwell's play. All right, Murphy said, we'll transport him to the station for verification. Better safe than sorry. Marcus was pulled to his feet, still handcuffed, and walked toward Caldwell's patrol car. Kendra ran down from the porch, her phone recording everything. You can't do this, she shouted. This is illegal. He's done nothing wrong. Caldwell turned to face her, his patience gone. Ma'am, one more word and you're going in the car with him. It was a threat that would be quoted in federal court 6 months later. A threat that revealed the complete absence of legitimate law enforcement purpose and the presence of something far darker, the abuse of power to punish people who challenged authority. What Caldwell and Holbrook didn't know was that Marcus's neighbor, 3 doors down, retired FBI Special Agent David Park, had been watching from his bedroom window. Park had seen the police lights. He had watched the entire encounter unfold. And unlike the officers, he immediately recognized what he was witnessing, an illegal detention based on racial profiling. Park grabbed his phone and made a call that would change everything. He contacted a friend who worked in the FBI's Civil Rights Division, a woman named Special Agent Sarah Michaels, who specialized in police misconduct cases. Sarah, it's David Park. I'm watching Montgomery County Police illegally detain my neighbor right now in his own driveway. He's a cardiac surgeon at Children's National. They have him in handcuffs. They're threatening to arrest his wife. You need to see this. Michaels was in her car within 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Marcus was placed in the back of the patrol car, still handcuffed, his face bruised from the concrete, his wrists raw from the cuffs. Through the window, he could see Kendra on the phone, pacing on the driveway. He could see Murphy talking to Caldwell and Holbrook. He could see his house, his home, the place where his children were sleeping, unaware that their father was being arrested for the crime of coming home from work. The patrol car pulled out of the driveway at 12:14 a.m., 27 minutes after the encounter began. Marcus was transported to the Montgomery County Police 2nd District Station in Bethesda, where he would spend the next 4 hours in a holding cell before being released without charges, without explanation, and without apology. But by the time he was released at 4:37 a.m., the machinery of justice was already in motion. Kendra had contacted Marcus's attorney, a civil rights lawyer named Rebecca Walsh, who specialized in police misconduct. Walsh had immediately filed an emergency writ of habeas corpus and contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office for Maryland. David Park has sent the CCTV footage to FBI Special Agent Michaels, who had watched it 3 times before making a decision. She opened a federal civil rights investigation at 2:15 a.m., less than 2 hours after Marcus was transported to the station. And the 911 call Kendra had made, along with the dispatch recordings of Caldwell's fabricated radio transmissions, were already being preserved as evidence by a supervisor at the Montgomery County Emergency Communication Center who understood that something had gone very, very wrong. The FBI investigation moved with extraordinary speed. Within 48 hours, agents had obtained all CCTV footage from Marcus's home surveillance system, all dispatch recordings, footage from the patrol car's dashboard camera, and all documentation from the police department. What they found was devastating. The CCTV footage showed Marcus arriving home, exiting his vehicle normally, and being confronted by officers who gave him no time to explain before ordering him to the ground. It showed him complying immediately. It showed officers searching his wallet, finding ID that proved he lived there, and choosing to detain him anyway. It showed Caldwell threatening Kendra when she identified her husband. It showed Murphy backing Caldwell's fabricated claims despite having confirmation from the hospital. The audio from Marcus's Apple Watch captured the pressure on his back, the pain in his voice as he tried to explain his identity, and Caldwell's dismissive responses. The dispatch recordings proved that Caldwell had lied about the circumstances, claiming Marcus was unable to verify his residency, when in fact, he had provided ID, offered multiple verification methods, and had his wife confirm his identity. But the most damaging evidence came from what the FBI investigators discovered when they looked into Caldwell's history. Of the 7 civilian complaints filed against him over 6 years, 4 involved allegations of racial profiling in affluent neighborhoods. In each case, Caldwell had detained or questioned people of color who were later proven to be residents, visitors, or legitimate workers in the neighborhoods where they were stopped. Not one of those complaints had resulted in disciplinary action. Not one had been referred for external investigation. Sergeant Murphy had signed off on every single dismissal, and in 3 cases had written commendations praising Caldwell's proactive policing. The pattern was undeniable. The documentation was overwhelming, and the constitutional violations were clear. The news media caught wind of the story on the 3rd day after the incident. A local reporter, tipped off by a source inside the police department, contacted Kendra Hayes for comment. She declined to speak on camera, but released a written statement through her attorney. "My husband is one of the nation's leading pediatric cardiac surgeons. He has saved hundreds of children's lives. He has dedicated his career to service. On Thursday night, he was treated like a criminal in his own driveway simply because officers made assumptions based on his appearance. This cannot stand. This cannot continue. We will pursue every avenue of justice to ensure this never happens to another family." The statement was picked up by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and every major news outlet in the region. Medical organizations issued statements of support. The Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund offered legal assistance. The story became national news within 24 hours. Montgomery County Police Chief Thomas Bradford held a press conference and made the mistake of defending his officers, saying they had followed standard procedures for investigating suspicious activity. The statement sparked outrage and protests outside police headquarters. The FBI investigation expanded. Special Agent Michaels wasn't just looking at this incident. She was looking at every stop Caldwell and Holbrook had made over the past 3 years. She was looking at Murphy's role in shielding them. She was looking at a pattern of civil rights violations that had been enabled by systematic supervisory failures. The federal indictments came down 6 months later. Officer Ryan Caldwell was charged with deprivation of civil rights under color of law, false imprisonment, conspiracy to violate constitutional rights, and filing false reports with intent to obstruct justice. Each count carried significant prison time. Officer Travis Holbrook was charged with civil rights violations, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. His cooperation during the investigation was minimal, and prosecutors showed no leniency. Sergeant Dennis Murphy faced the most serious charges: conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and supervisory failure to investigate civil rights violations. The emails and memos discovered during the investigation showed Murphy had actively coached Caldwell on how to word reports to avoid triggering oversight reviews. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury watched the CCTV footage in its entirety. They listened to the Apple Watch audio. They heard Kendra's 911 call. They reviewed Caldwell's radio transmissions and compared them to the documented facts. They heard testimony from David Park, from hospital administrators, and from 4 other victims of Caldwell's previous stops who came forward after the case became public. Marcus testified for 4 hours. He described the surgery that saved Emma Rodriguez's life. He described driving home exhausted. He described the confusion and fear of being forced to the ground on his own property. He described lying face down on concrete, feeling gravel cut his skin, wondering if he would survive the encounter. He described the humiliation of being handcuffed in front of his home while his wife watched and his children slept inside, unaware. His testimony was calm, professional, and absolutely devastating. The jury deliberated for 5 hours, guilty on all counts for all 3 defendants. Caldwell was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Holbrook received 5 years. Murphy, whose role in enabling years of misconduct was deemed egregious by the judge, received 8 years. Their law enforcement careers were over, their pensions were forfeited, their names were permanently entered into federal databases that would prevent them from ever working in law enforcement again. But the consequences extended beyond the individual officers. The Department of Justice issued a consent decree requiring Montgomery County Police to implement comprehensive reforms: mandatory bias training, independent review of all use of force incidents, civilian oversight of complaint investigations, body cameras with tamper-proof recordings, and public reporting of stop data broken down by race and neighborhood. Marcus and Kendra's civil lawsuit against the department settled for $6.2 million, but the money wasn't what mattered to them. What mattered was the requirement, written into the settlement, that their case be used as a training example in every police academy in Maryland. 18 months after that Thursday night, Dr. Marcus Hayes stood at a podium in the auditorium of Children's National Hospital. He was addressing a group of medical students, young doctors beginning their careers, most of them people of color who understood implicitly the dangers he had faced. Excellence is not armor, Marcus told them. Credentials are not protection. I have performed over 2,400 heart surgeries. I have published dozens of papers. I have won awards and trained surgeons across the country. None of that mattered when I pulled into my driveway that night. What mattered was evidence. What mattered was documentation. What mattered was persistence. He paused, looking out at the faces in the audience. Emma Rodriguez, the little girl whose surgery I completed that night, is 9 years old now. She runs, she plays soccer, she has a future. That's what I was fighting for when I lay on that driveway. Not just my own dignity, but the idea that we should all be able to go home safely after trying to save lives. The audience rose in applause that lasted nearly 2 minutes. Colonel David Park, the retired FBI agent who had witnessed the arrest and made the crucial call that started the federal investigation, was honored by the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund for his role in documenting the incident and ensuring accountability. In his acceptance speech, he said simply, "When you see injustice, you have 2 choices: look away or look closer." I chose to look closer. Marcus returned to his operating room. Kendra continued her work treating children with cancer. Their 3 children grew older, knowing their father had stood up for justice, even when the system tried to crush him. The case became required study material in police academies across the country. A framed copy of Marcus's testimony was placed in the FBI's Civil Rights Division offices in Washington. The CCTV footage was shown to thousands of officers as an example of how bias, assumptions, and abuse of power can destroy lives and careers. Caldwell, Holbrook, and Murphy served their sentences in federal facilities. They learned too late that in America, badges don't grant immunity from justice when constitutional rights are violated. On quiet Thursday nights, Marcus Hayes still pulls into his driveway after long shifts at the hospital. Sometimes he sits in his car for a moment before going inside, remembering that night, remembering the fear, remembering the cold concrete against his face. But mostly, he remembers the choice he made to fight back, to demand accountability, and to ensure that the next surgeon, the next doctor, the next person of color coming home from work wouldn't have to endure what he endured. Justice was served, but the price of demanding it should never have been so high. This case changed lives and ended careers. But if you think this story is shocking, wait until you see what happened to the federal prosecutor who pulled over the wrong police chief. That case is even more insane.